Yes, 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 yes. It is a wonderful day. Heart surfers, welcome, welcome, welcome to Healing Me Before We. This podcast addresses owning our emotional drama and identifying what we bring to our relationships. We believe healing starts with ourselves first. So we bring to you a unique way of uncovering limiting beliefs about relationships by examining the common uses of cliches. My name is Sharon, the Heart Lady, relationship specialist, and this is the co-host, our wonderful co-host, Dan, the Sway Man. We are so excited to share our views with you. So, Dan, what's the cliche of this week?
Aloha, Sharon. The cliche this week is staying for the sake of the children.
Okay.
Now, before I get into that, I want to remember something that I didn't remember last time,
Yes.
and that is I want to begin with a shout out or an aloha to a young couple that I met on Jekyll Island about a month ago at this place called Zachary's. Give them a free plug for their wonderful food. And their names are Taylor and Richard. And they were celebrating their anniversary. And I chatted it up with them a little bit. And they told me that they were having fun on their anniversary. Isn't that beautiful? They
All right.
were,
Did you find out how many years?
well, I remember that it was still in the single digits. I don't believe it was at the double digit. However, they met when they were 14, Sharon,
Mm-hmm.
childhood sweethearts,
Yeah.
and they knew how important it was to keep fun in the marriage.
Absolutely. Shout out, shout out. Give me their names again.
Taylor and Richard.
Shout out, Taylor and Richard. We wish you the very, very best and happiness in marriage and life. I also met my honey when I was 14 as well.
You were 14.
Yes, I
Okay,
was 14.
is it okay if I ask how old Donovan
No,
was?
it's not okay.
Okay.
I said I met him. That's all. I
Oh, I
met
got it.
at that age, and we had about 2 years of telephone relationships.
Okay. Oh, a long distance relationship to
Yes,
start with, huh?
yes, yes, yes.
And I
Telephone.
met
That time
Maggie.
we had the landline.
I remember the party lines, actually, when you could hear your neighbors on the
Oh,
phone and hear what was going on in their homes.
okay. Well, I wasn't that old.
I got you. All right.
All right.
So
So
now we got that into our podcast, and I'm
let's
glad
get
you
into
remembered
it.
it because it's so
What?
important, right? That
Mhm.
we celebrate marriages and relationships and
Absolutely.
partnerships, and that we recognize that they do take effort. And they recognized that as well. They were out having fun and enjoying each other. And one of the things I noticed is how happy they were with each other. And I didn't ask them, though, the next question, which is related to our podcast, if they had any children. I don't really know if they have children.
That's
And when we bring children into a relationship of marriage, we know, you and I know, because we both have children, that it changes the whole dynamic of the marriage,
Mhm.
whether it's for the better or for the worse. You know, that part of the vow too of marriage, right? For better or for worse. We
Yeah,
just know that it changes it
yeah.
and it changes it dramatically. And it comes back to what you talked about in your introduction, as far as like, what do I bring into the marriage from my own relationship and my family of being a child to parents?
Hmm.
Whether it was two parents, one parent, whether it was the traditional male and female, whether it was something different, whether I know it or not on a conscious level, that's going to come with me into my relationship with my significant other in terms of how I am going to approach parenting.
Hmm. Yeah, I get it. So going back to the cliche, what do you think about staying in the marriage because of the children?
Well, I'm going to tell you something from my own personal history. That's why I started out with this.
Okay.
My parents divorced,
Mhm.
and me and my siblings were thrilled that they divorced. And I'll tell
Mm.
you why.
Hmm.
Because there was always conflict in the house. There
Hmm.
was always yelling and fighting and screaming and even more. And it was not a house of harmony. It
Yeah,
was a house of chaos.
yeah,
And that was not healthy for neither one of my parents or for any of me and my siblings.
yeah,
So I'm in favor of two people who aren't in harmony with each other, even if they have children.
yeah.
I'm in favor of them separating and or divorcing.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that because if you are displaying your anger, your dissatisfaction, your unhappiness. Maybe you're displaying symptoms of anxiety and depression. All of that energy goes to the children. And we may think that the children don't hear or know, but they definitely feel it. And so we have a responsibility as parents, to allow our children to grow up in a home that is stable emotionally as well as physically, helping them to feel safe. Because as we know, that they take this trauma into adulthood, and how you relate as a relationship, as caregivers, as primary caregivers, you also are teaching the children, this is how you react to a partner. This is how you treat your partner. And so they learn values and they learn respect for each other, uh, as a family and as a community at large. So it's important that we consider all the nuances. I'm not advocating that, oh, you have an unhappy marriage and you need to leave and you have, 10 children, you have 6 children, you have one child. If you can work it out, if you can find counsel, if you can learn to grow and really get some soul searching for yourself, then maybe it could work. If you're in an unhappy marriage, then there is both of you responsibility to do what's best. And if you can keep the family intact, which I'm in favor of keeping the family intact, then use everything that you can at your disposal to create the happiness that is possible in the household. And that there's a lot of controversy. I know a lot of women who stay together because I grew up in a single home and I don't want my children to grow up in a single parenthood, so I'm just gonna suck it up.
Hmm.
There's a lot of sacrifice when you do that, right, Dan?
Well, absolutely. And you said a couple things that I want to touch upon. The word that you and I use often is respect.
Mm, yeah,
Children need to see that in the matrimonial relationship, that the two people respect each other. And if they're not modeling that kind of respect for each other, just like you said earlier, then that's going to come into their relationship with whoever they end up with as well. And
right.
it's so important. And this is something that I did do because I did recognize that I came from a chaotic, violent family in my own childhood. They were issues that I did address
Yeah,
before I got into my marriage
good for
with
you.
Maggie. Now, unfortunately, there were still some things that I hadn't come to resolution with as well,
Mhm.
even into the marriage. And once the children came into our relationship,
Yeah,
and going back to what you said again, I continue to go get the help and support that I needed so
yeah,
that I could be a better parent
yeah,
instead of one coming damaged and traumatized from my own childhood.
yeah,
And that's what we have to recognize. And we talk
yeah,
about this all the time, right? It doesn't mean that we're permanently damaged.
yeah.
It's not what we're saying.
Oh,
What we're
no.
saying is we need to recognize that whatever we grew up in, whatever kind of an environment we grew up in, is
Yeah,
going to come with us. Now, I
yeah,
want to go back to the other thing you said about sacrifice, and women especially, and
yeah,
I'll agree with you. It's more often women who stay in unhappy marriages for the sake of the children
yeah,
because they think that their children will benefit by them staying. And
yeah,
maybe that is the case. I'm not saying that there's an absolute right or wrong answer there.
yeah,
What I'm saying though is as long as they are in a relationship that models that respect, that's really the most important.
yeah. I would respect and values. Yeah, I agree with that. As long as and they're not, there's no physical fighting in front of the
Right.
children. There is no you know evidence that we are not talking to each other because that silence is also a form of abuse. I often tell my couples, if you're going to argue in front of the children, and preferably not, or you think that they heard, then it's just as important to make up in front of the children
Mm.
so that they're able to see the balance. Okay, I was angry, but now we're making up. And so that they can actually see that. And that's a good way of modeling. I think a lot of mothers stay in the marriage is for finances as well. And so
Sure.
it's real important that when you get together, that there is that talk about finances and that, you know, um, you understand how much that impacts the family. I've told young children teenagers, I should say, adolescents, when they are starting their relationships, that when they become intimate, that they need to know that everyone who they may be with is a potential parent for their child. And
That's true.
they're like, it doesn't matter what precautions you take, you know that could be a mother or a father of a child. And so I give them that information because how important it is that, women get pregnant and then they end up staying with the child's father because they are pregnant and not really ready for a marriage. And it doesn't always make it a happy marriage. And
Mm.
therefore, they start off not knowing themselves and not knowing each other. And they're kind of like put together because of the children, and they try to stay together because of the children. But, those are the times when it really doesn't work out.
Well, that's because they don't follow what you and I talk about, and that is putting ourselves first,
Mhm.
even if it seems like it's wrong when
Yeah,
it comes to, oh, we have children or we're going to bring a child into the world.
yeah,
It's not a reason to stay together in that relationship because, as you and I both know, it's not enough.
yeah,
It's not enough to keep people together.
yeah,
And how many people have tried that over and over the years, right?
yeah,
To
yeah,
say, oh, well, this child will make us now a family and
yeah,
we will be intact as a
yeah,
result of it. And that's not the case
yeah,
because what's going to eventually happen is the relationship isn't being nurtured. And I'm talking about the marriage, the
yeah,
partnership isn't being nurtured, isn't being given that kind of attention that that baby or child is being given. So someone begins to starve, or the marriage and the relationship starves. So you stay together for the sake of the child. And what did you model for the child? What
yeah,
did you teach the child? It
yeah.
doesn't promote putting ourselves first
First, yeah,
in a way that then expands or extends to the other members
yeah,
of the family.
yeah. When you made me think of something when they stay because of the children and that imbalance, oftentimes one parent would um um what's the terminology? One person would overcompensate their
Hmm.
nurturing their love upon the child. And
Yes.
then now you're even drifting even further from creating the relationship with the partner. So now the child is psychologically impacted by you
Yes.
over nurturing, or maybe you're under nurturing and you're wanting so much to rebuild the relationship with the father or the parent, right?
Mhm. Well,
And
you're
neglect
talking
the
about
child.
the child becomes the surrogate,
Yes.
right? Almost
Yeah.
in some ways, the substitute for the other person who is not really fully engaged in the relationship.
Yeah.
Because if I view the relationship as one of staying in it of sacrifice, then I know that that other person isn't really being my partner in this relationship. I'm staying just because of the child. The reason I'm staying in the relationship is because of the child, not because of my love for my partner.
Partner. Yeah. And if the partner picks that up, then there's always going to be this underlying resentment.
Hmm.
And then that will, can lead to many things like infidelity, more arguing, and also decrease in self-esteem. So it's very complicated if you are staying for the child. Let's stay together because of the love of the family once you have children.
Mm.
And then we didn't even say how blended families,
Oh yeah, that's a
that,
whole different
yeah,
dynamic.
yeah,
That's
if you're
even
staying
different
because
dynamic.
of the children, but it's blended
Hmm.
both sides, then that complicates the issue as well. Who gets all the children? Who do we divide up the children?
Yeah.
I think the whole theme of this is really making sure that we are ready to be married and that we
Yes.
take
Prevention. I like
relationships.
prevention.
Yeah, yeah,
So discussion about when two people decide, as you said earlier, whoever you decide to be sexually intimate with is a potential partner
yeah,
for parenting in
yeah,
life.
yeah,
Now, it doesn't mean though that they're going to necessarily be someone that's going to be your life partner or
right,
someone that you're going to be married to. Because
right.
in many ways, the child is going to be better off if you do decide not to get married. You're still going to be parents, whether you like it or not. You're going to share that responsibility. And how you share it, whether you share it in the same home or you share it in separate homes, that's really what it comes down to, and how you do it still partners in parenting. That's the most important piece. And even when my mother and father divorced, they didn't know how to really be partners in parenting. They didn't even talk to each other, right? For
Mm,
years. And
yeah,
they pitted the children or used the children to gain, support
right,
against the other one. And
yeah,
so that wasn't healthy for
right,
any of us.
right.
And so even if you decide to divorce, and which is a decision, a choice, right? It may be the better choice for the sake of the children,
Yeah.
as long as you can still be respectful toward each other and remember that you share a responsibility, whether you're living in the same home or a separate dwelling, to make sure that you promote that kind of positive relationship to benefit your children.
Yes, absolutely. The pawning and manipulation of using the children to get what you want or to send messages.
Yeah.
Tell your mother this, tell your father that. My mom says this, and I'm seeing this. So it's really, really a sad if you can't co-parent. So I'm saying that if you do decide to break up, decide to divorce, separate, then the co-parenting, get coaching, get counseling around how to co-parent so that you also are exemplifying, well, we can't get along together, but we still have respect, as you said, and responsibilities, and
Mhm.
showing the children that the love is not divided, even though the parents are not living together. So I think that's real important. So whether if you do decide to divorce, you still need to have some coaching. You need to see specialists, uh, because number one, when you, or I think a lot of people don't realize that when you break up, that's also like a grieving. It's part of
Oh,
grieving.
absolutely.
And
And
so you are
traumatic for the
going
children.
through these same type of emotions that if
Mm.
someone just, passed on, made their transition, you are going through the same type, that anger, the shame,
Yeah.
feeling betrayed, so all of those things that you go through are part of a grieving process.
Mhm.
So before, during, and after, that's what we need. So making sure that we're in maintenance and keeping healthy within ourselves, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, in order to grow a happier and healthier family.
Well, you and I talked about this already today, and I'm all for communication before
Yeah,
the children are born, whenever
yeah,
possible, right? And we
yeah.
know sometimes that people get pregnant, and it isn't always with intention.
Right.
Sometimes it happens as a result of, whatever happens when two people get together physically. As you said, there's always that opportunity for pregnancy to happen. And
Absolutely.
so, if there can be some careful planning as
Yeah,
far as when two people come together and decide to have a child,
yeah,
and make sure that there's communication
yeah,
about whatever it is, how you view parenting. How
yeah,
do you view discipline? And when I say discipline, I mean teaching, not punitive.
yeah,
And how are you going to approach that together as partners?
yeah,
It's wonderful to observe my son Seamus and his significant other Courtney. They're partners in parenting. It's just a wonderful thing for me to observe in that relationship.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And one of the things I'm going to talk about, because we talk about our tips,
Yes.
is the tip that I have given previously is go out on dates. When you have children, you really have to have intention and purpose to go on dates and go without the children. You don't have to always bring the children. Go on a date without the child.
Mhm.
We talked about this one. Bring yourself and leave your phone home. Don't bring your phone. Now,
Mhm.
the third thing is, and this is what Maggie and I struggled with, don't talk about the children on the date.
That's
If
right.
you have to talk about the children, talk about them at another time. Because we even tried okay, we'll talk 2 minutes about the children and then we'll move on. That didn't work, right? The 2 minutes became the 20 minutes, the 30 minutes, and then we never really got to what? Me and Maggie.
Yeah,
And so be curious about each other in a new way, as if like it's the first date all over again. And I
yeah,
know that might sound a little far-fetched. I get it.
yeah.
Just be curious about each other and learn new things about each other.
Yes, I like that. Absolutely, that we stay to that we have dates. And dates doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go out the house. Maybe you
That's
can
true.
take the children, maybe an in-law will take the children for a couple of hours. But the whole thing is keeping the spark alive
Yes.
and remembering that regardless of the children, that you still are a couple.
Mhm.
And I
First,
think, yeah, you are a couple first, and then you become the parents. So we are approaching the end of our podcast. We hope that you enjoyed the conversation, that you listened to some of Dan's tips. I'm going to leave with the quote of the day. Or the quote for the cliche is don't stay together for the kids. They should grow up knowing what happiness and love is. So that is a quote, but I'm not going to say, I want to change that a little bit and say, don't stay together for the kids. I would say, please consider the children,
I like that.
right? Because,
Well, the children are always going to be considered, whether we stay together or not.
well, yes, but I don't want to tell people don't do this and don't do that.
Mhm.
So I'd
Well,
like,
they're all different. Every
yes,
relationship, every marriage is different.
yeah.
So there's no absolute stay or don't stay.
Yes. So I want to make sure that, I thought that was an interesting quote, you know, consider the children, children need to see happiness and love in their home in order to be productive, viable, happy adults and begin, and not have so much trauma, right? This is what we're trying to talk about. Consider yourself, go through the healing so that, we have less conflict with each other. Ain't that
Yes.
right, Dan?
That is right. Because,
All
you
right.
and I are all about the sway,
Yes.
right? And
Yep.
and sending waves across the universe. And the sway includes in our own family. And what a beautiful thing that is to promote and to model for our children.
Absolutely. Well, from my heart, Dan's heart, to your heart, we're hoping that you have a heartfelt day.
Surf's up.